Welcome to Type Tune Tint. I'm Tom Kranz. For most of us dog owners, a dog isn't just a dog. A dog is family. And we often welcome our new family members through adoption agencies who rely on caring humans to foster the animals until a permanent home is found. My guest today is Joe Dinicola, who, with his family, has fostered dogs for several years. One dog in particular captured their hearts and inspired Joe to write his first children's book about a family like his who fostered, then adopted, a dog who needed a home. And I'm joined by Joe Dinicola from his palatial estate in Scotch Plains, New Jersey, which happens to be one of the towns that circles my town, Fanwood, New Jersey, here in beautiful Union County. Joe, how you doing today?
Thanks, Tom. Thanks for having me on.
Sure. You're taking a break from your very busy life. You just gave me a quick preview here, and we'll talk more about it. We're here on the occasion of Joe's brand new children's book, Jordan and the Fosters. What's that all about? So my attention was drawn to Joe and his book because Joe fosters dogs for an agency, a rescue agency called Home for Good, which is based in Berkeley Heights, New Jersey, which is close to us. My wife and I have rescued our last two dogs through Home for Good, so we're very, very familiar with it. And she was on their page, and somebody at Home for Good decided to throw you some compliments and say, one of our fosters, Joe, I just published his new book, and the book just happens to be called Jordan and the Fosters. And I read through it, and it's basically your life, essentially, correct?
Well, it's based on events within our life. Yes, it is. I circle it around a family that's similar to ours. And the family decides it's actually more circled around the dog, Jordan.
Got it.
And Jordan is a real life dog that we currently have adopted through Home for Good dog.
Yeah, there's a picture of Jordan in the back of your book.
Yep.
And there he is.
And his demeanor in the book is similar to how we were introduced to him in real life. He was very timid, very shy, very scared. Like the first night we had him as a foster, it took us about an hour or two to get him into the house after letting him out the back door to go to the bathroom. He would not come back in, especially if I were there. He was very afraid of me. My wife was more, he was more prone to go to her coming in. So we had a very challenging start for Jordan with us, but over time we developed this relationship with him. We loved, he opened up to us, and we just decided to fall in love. And at one point he was transferred to another foster, and we kept thinking about him. My wife even said, every time I see a picture on the Home for Good where they have adoptions, where they show pictures of families adopting dogs, every time they show a picture, I fear that I'm going to see his going to another family.
Oh.
So we eventually said, no, we can't let that happen. So we asked Home for Good dog for a special circumstance to adopt Jordan, because we knew he had trouble getting adopted. He had been in the foster system, you could say, through Home for Good for 6 months before we even had him. And that's really a high number for the number of dogs that go through that organization.
Was that the first time you fostered a dog?
No, it wasn't. We had fostered a couple dogs before Jordan. We got to Jordan. So generally the dogs, we'd have maybe a week, 2 weeks, and they'd get adopted. I mean, it was a really great system. The kids loved it. They had new dogs every week and that they can play with and enjoy. But Jordan was a special case. He had not been adopted because he was just very standoffish. He did not, he wasn't welcoming people to him at the events where they would have these adoption events.
Yeah, so of the two dogs we rescued from Home for Good, one of them, her name's Roxy. She's a sweet, I think she's a pit lab mix.
Mm-hmm.
She has kind of a pit bull's body, but a lab's face. It's kind of weird. She was scared to death of me for the first year. And her history was she was rescued from essentially an outdoor dirt pit in Georgia. So we think that she was probably abused. She was probably neglected. We saw that she had mange, and she was probably, every time I would pick up the TV remote, she would cower. So that told me that somebody probably beat her with a stick or something. So I get it. So there's obviously a difference between a foster and adoption. Adoption is, home for good, as it were. The foster thing, what does that entail, becoming a foster?
So in the beginning of my book, I there's one little blurb there. There's a quote, it tells you what foster is. And fostering is providing love and care to another being without the burden of um, ownership or governmental's officialness. It's this fostering is you just take something in and love. So in regards to fostering the dogs for the home for good dog rescue is a foster only rescue. They don't have kennels. They don't have
Oh, I see.
facilities where they store the dogs, where
So
they're
all
in
the
like these
dogs that they
whole.
put up for adoption are with people like you,
They're
basically.
all fostered with
Got it.
through volunteers through their organization,
Okay.
and in order for the Home for Good dog to even keep that sustainable, they have a pretty strict policy of you cannot adopt as a foster.
Really?
Yeah. So
Because
that
I
was,
would imagine that must come up. I mean, people fall in love with a dog from time to
and
time,
that's
but
that's the
that's
thing.
what
They
happened
don't
to you guys, right?
well, yes, and we were able to get a special circumstance because we promised to continue fostering after we adopted, right?
I see.
Um, so a lot of times people will foster, they find the dog they love, and then they just adopt and then they stop fostering, and that that,
Oh,
that doesn't keep things sustainable
I
for
got it.
them as
So
if they're
it's a
100%
disincentive
foster.
when they have. I got you. Okay,
Yeah,
that kind
yeah.
of makes
So
sense, I guess.
it it does, and that was actually the clincher for me because I was resistant about fostering dogs when my wife brought it up, and I was like, I don't know, because the next thing you know, we'll have six dogs, and I really can't have that. Of course, we have four now, but two of them are not ours. But when she said that, I was like, you know what? That makes a lot of sense. I think it's worth trying now. And a lot of people might not realize that. In some organizations they don't have this policy, but some organizations I would imagine do,
Yeah.
and they should investigate that. If they're looking to foster but they're fearful of being trapped with a dog, they don't have to be.
All right. So how long have you been fostering dogs?
So we 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 had two dogs for about 13 years. They were our first dogs as a couple. Um, and last summer, like August or late July, we lost one of our dogs through you know, an illness. She was like 13 years old, so she was
Mhm.
old, and she was our first. Um, After that, my wife's like, well, I'm really thinking I would like to foster. And I was worried because my other dog was also older, which her name was Fiona. And she was the one that I portray in the book uh, because she was older and she was a little crotchety. I was really worried about bringing dogs in the house because it was her territory.
Sure.
But she convinced me, like I said, um, and we decided to do it, and it went well. I mean, she was not like playful with the dog or anything, but she tolerated
She
him.
came
The
around a
first,
lot.
yeah,
According to the
she
book,
came
she came
around.
around basically, right?
Well, yeah, the book was a little bit of a story, but that was kind of like the basis of her initial reaction to Jordan was kind of how she was in real life. And unfortunately, Fiona didn't. She died not too long after we started fostering.
So the book itself, it's a very sweet book about the family called the Fosters, who basically have a dog named Fiona, and she's an older dog, and they decide to foster this younger new dog named Jordan. And he first comes and he's scared, and then he's got a lot of energy, but poor Fiona is getting older. And then at some point, Fiona gets taken to the vet and she doesn't come home. So then there's a whole lesson there about, about death and about the fact that dogs pass away at some point. But it's written very sensitively. It's obviously written for kids, which, it is a kid's book after all, right? So this book is based on essentially very broadly the experience you guys had. Why did you decide to write about this?
It was a moment where I have a history of writing books. I have an interest of writing, and I had been thinking about writing a children's book for quite a while, but I struggled with figuring out the best way to illustrate it, but and I didn't really have a very clinching idea yet. I had some idea, something about dogs or anything, but it wasn't until we started fostering the dogs and we met Jordan where I was inspired by this moment where I thought about if Fiona were with us and Jordan were here, how would she handle it? Like I really think that it would be great to have a story where these two dogs that are from different pasts and have different ages and they meet, and it would be a really great story to be able to show how one dog can help another dog, um, uh, join a new family and
Hmm.
learn the things that the thing. So it came to me in an overnight, thought process. And I was writing. Next thing I know, I was writing. I had the story done in days.
Okay.
Um, and it was just one of those moments where the lightning strikes and you have to work with it. So that's how I felt with this story. And it also inspired me to say, okay, well, this sounds great. I can leave it to a moment where Jordan then takes over the mentor role, and I can have series of books where Jordan is the mentor of all these different fosters. That's why it's a Jordan and the fosters. It's a double meaning it's not just the fosters, the family, but it's also Jordan the fosters
Sure.
of the other fosters that the family will take in
Sure.
along with.
So you wrote, how long did it take you to actually write the story?
It took me, it's like I said, it took me a couple days to really get it. I mean, uh, I actually wrote it a lot more in depth. I had to actually pare it down quite a bit
Yeah.
because it seemed to be too a little too complex for young minds. So I had some people read it. I had some friends read it. I had my co-author from my original book, read it, which is another interesting story, by the way, if we have some time to touch on that a little bit. And he loved it. He said he gave me some pointers on things, and I was able to pare it down to a good amount that gave a good story, fulfilled a lot of things. And then it came to the illustrations.
On the cover of the book, we've got a family there. Is that a reproduction of your actual family?
Yeah, I try to model it a little bit behind myself. I wanted to make it a realistic family in some way.
Yeah.
It's always you see this guy, the father is always this, perfect, chiseled guy. And it's like, let me just make him a little bit after myself. I'm not the most perfect, looking character, but I think it would be a good to have something realistic. And my original version of Mrs. Foster, you know, my wife originally took a little offense to it. I was trying to make it a little more. She didn't like the way, so I had to recreate her a little bit, and she was happy with this version of it.
Yikes. Yeah. Welcome to being an author, right? All right. So, yeah. So, you mentioned that you co-wrote a science fiction book called Project Return Fire. I
Yeah.
saw it on Amazon. It's got 194 reviews and it's been around for it says it was published in 2015, so that's 9 years ago. Why? So, what is your writer's back? Did you just always just kind of want to write, and then one day you and this other guy sat down and wrote this book, or how did that happen?
So yes, the culmination of that book started out as a screenplay. Um, I have this dream of writing screenplays for movies, and then I got into it after college. I took a I took a seminar at this film school in New York, and the name escapes me right now, but it was just basically a couple nights a week. You write this script, and I came up with this idea for this book called it was just called Return Fire, and it's a book or a screenplay about these modern day soldiers that find this cave in the Jura Mountains of France, which is right next to Switzerland, um, and they discover this you know hidden away time machine designed and built by the Nazis. And they inadvertently get transported back in time to 1945, just before the end of the war. and they have no idea where they are. They figure out, okay, they must have been transported, and now they have to figure out a way to get home without changing time
About
or
changing
the
history,
history.
basically. Yeah.
Yeah, without changing history, which is the old time travel trope, you know. So I mean, but I feel like this version of this has a little bit of a um, not so much a twist, but it takes a more, like I said, a realistic view on time travel. It's like really there is no way to know whether or not you're changing history or not, right?
Hmm.
So it's a nice little, I feel like it's a nice twist in the end that that people, if they want to read it, will get. And I tried to finish it, but I entered it into this contest called Amazon Studios. Now, most people might know Amazon Studios today for making their movies and getting lots of awards, but they started out as a crowdsourcing website called Amazon Studios, and every month they would hold screenplay contests where you would win $10,000 and a deal to develop your screenplay.
Hmm.
And this was back in 2011, maybe even 2010, maybe not that far back, but that's where I met my co-writer. It was a forum on AmazonStudios.com where you would go and you would present your screenplay, you would upload it to Amazon Studios, and people would look at it and read it, and you would collaborate with other writers. And I met my co-writer. He took a liking to my original script, and he rewrote it, and he transformed it to really what it is today. Because I was no writer. I was an idea man. He was the writer.
So he
Um,
transformed it from a screenplay into a novel.
no, he rewrote the screenplay to another screenplay and allowed us to get to a point where we were actually very close to getting a development deal with Amazon Studios.
Okay.
But that didn't come to culmination. They decided to pass on it ultimately, and we decided to move on. And then we decided he had some success with writing self-publishing some novels himself. My co-writer Anthony Davies. He actually lives in England. I've never met him in person. We've only collaborated through online emails and forums, and that's how successful we were with just doing that. So he was able to help uh, convert it from a screenplay to a novel. And that just took a lot of magic. That he has this great prose writing style that I just feel is so snappy with the way he writes, that it's a really great book. And that's where we self-published it on Amazon, and that's where it's been ever since.
Did you write the story first and then do the illustrations, or did you do it the other way around, or did you do them together?
So I wrote the story first. I had the document, and I decided to at first I ultimately I used AI to generate the images, but at first I struggled with it. ChatGPT has an image generating AI, and I was, trying to create these prompts that would create whole scenes within the book.
Mhm.
And I wrote the book. I wrote the story first, and I was trying to create the scenes based on the words. And that was not working right. So then I went to a website called Fiverr.com, where they have people who offer services
Sure.
too. And I looked up some illustrators, and I saw some great, people on there doing some great stuff. So I hired an illustrator through Fiverr.com, and the initial images that came back were better than what I did, but they still weren't right. But and then I realized they were using AI to generate the images themselves.
Really?
And I was like, I'm paying you to do this, but I feel like I can do this because I can do this. I can figure this out. Then, if they're doing this and making that kind of success, I can figure this out. So then I found this other website called Midjourney, and this image generator AI allowed me to really successfully complete my vision that what I wanted to do for these books. And I also figured out the best way to create the images. I had to break down the image based on a scene and then characters.
Mm.
And then so I would create the scene, which would be the room. I would say, okay, give me a room, like let's say, for instance, in the cover, give me a house, with a white picket fence, green foliage around, and a red, and it would generate this one scene in this certain style of drawing, and I would have to create those themes across the whole book. So that allowed me to really be able to build the page and the story build the illustrations based on the story. And I did after I went through it once through, I realized, okay, so there's certain things here I'm missing. So I had to add some additional story dialogue or descriptions in the story to kind of help fill some gaps with the images that I was generating. I noticed some gaps that were not being, so it was like, I wrote the initial story first, created the images, and then went back to the story to kind of fill in some gaps of images that I had created that I felt were needed.
Well, that's really, it's a testament to the power of AI, but also to the power of the human being who guides the AI. And as we
Yeah,
keep
exactly.
hearing, AI is a beautiful thing, but it's only a tool. You still need somebody with a vision and theoretically somebody with a little bit of talent and somebody to guide it the right way. But it turned out great. I mean, it's a great looking book and the illustrations are fantastic. So tell us a little bit about how people can find the book. The book, I found it on Amazon. Where else is the book available?
So Amazon, it is available on Amazon in both paperback, hardcover, and ebook, e-publish, so you can watch on your tablet. Um, I It's also available online through Barnes and Noble, both paperback, cover, and ebook, and also Apple through ebook. Um, and also, there's a couple places that I provide the book that you can buy direct through me. One is Jordan and the Fosters.fun. That's just a basic website that has the book, and then it links it to the Amazon site. Also, because you said your wife saw the book on the Home for Good Dog social media.
Right on the Facebook
So
page.
I actually was able to partner with Home for Good Dog with my book because Jordan is an alumni of Home for Good Dog, and
Sure.
they
It's like
took a
doing a
special.
commercial for them, really.
Yeah, they appreciated it so much. I actually offered to partner with them. That if you go to hfg.jordanandthefosters.fun, you can go to that website, will bring you to a special link that when you purchase the book through that link, a portion of the sales will go to Home for Good Dog
Oh,
as a
sweet.
donation.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's a special partnership. So there's many ways you can get it. We hope you would go through Home for Good Dog to give back to the dog rescue.
Well, it all sounds great. What's next for you? Are you going to continue to do more
So
children's books, or is there going to be a
I would
sequel
love
to?
to. Yeah, I would love to do more Jordan the Foster series. I have thought of some ideas. Nothing has struck like the lightning bolt as the original, but I do have many ideas that I would like to continue with the series of Jordan the Fosters. And then, there's always ideas floating in my head for my science fiction book, the sequel to that, but that's just been going on so long. I don't know if I'll ever get to that. Plus, with three boys, four dogs, full-time job, it's really hard to carve out the time. A lot of times it comes down to just doing late night, work, and a lot of times it's just too tiring to really kind of focus on that.
So between working, as you said, and the dogs and the kids, and promoting your book, there's very little time left to actually write. But that's the independent author's plight in life. Joe Dinicola, I appreciate you being with me. I wish you nothing but success with this and all your projects, and maybe I'll see you at a book fair. Thanks for joining me, and we'll talk again soon.
Great. Thanks so much for having me, Tom. Nice
All right.
meeting you.